Welcome back to Keep It Real Boxing. This is Cypher Box, and Eddie Hearn has just told Sky Sports that he's not ruling out the potential fight between Dillian Whyte and Luis Ortiz. Now, as you know, recently Eddie Hearn and Matchroom Boxing lost a purse bid to Epic Sports to control and host the fight between Dillian Whyte and Kubrat Pulev in a final IBF Eliminator. And by the sounds of things, it looks like Epic Sports will be happy to give Pulev the advantage by staging the fight in Bulgaria. Now, he's just done an interview with Sky Sports stating that they're not ruling out a fight with Luis Ortiz. As you know, there's a lot of politics going on with the WBC at the moment, along with Dillian Whyte, Luis Ortiz and Dominic Breazeale. Now, Dillian Whyte is the #1 ranked WBC heavyweight challenger. Right, so he's #1 ranked in terms of his position in the WBC's rankings, but he's not the mandatory challenger to Deontay Wilder's WBC title. The mandatory challenger, the first mandatory challenger, is Dominic Breazeale. Now, Dillian Whyte has been told that he can be the second mandatory challenger to Deontay Wilder's WBC title if he beats Luis Ortiz in their final eliminator for the position of second mandatory challenger. All right, Eddie Hearn has basically turned around and said that they would consider fighting Luis Ortiz, providing the WBC make the winner of the fight between Whyte and Ortiz the #1 mandatory challenger to Deontay Wilder's WBC title. That means pushing Dominic Breazeale from #1 mandatory challenger's position to #2, I would assume. That's what Eddie Hearn is saying. Eddie Hearn is basically saying that if the WBC agree to their demands, which is that they will fight Luis Ortiz, providing that fight is a final eliminator for the #1 mandatory position for Deontay Wilder's WBC title. Okay, here's my take on it. I think personally Dillian Whyte and Eddie Hearn have probably sat down and thought that they don't fancy going to Bulgaria to fight Kubrat Pulev, because remember, at the end of the day, if it ends up going 12 rounds and it ends up going to the scorecards and the decision is left in the judge's hands, you know, they may favour the hometown fighter a little bit. So there's always that risk. And personally, I think they probably don't feel like they want that fight in Bulgaria. They would prefer to have it in the UK, of course. But of course, Eddie Hearn lost out on the bid. Epic Sports bid just over 1.5 million for the fight, and they won the bid. And they've got control of the fight now. So Epic Sports have the control of the fight, and they're saying that basically they're going to give Pulev his advantage, his home advantage, by staging a fight in Bulgaria. Now, Eddie Hearn and Dillian Whyte, well, Eddie Hearn has come out and said that they're happy to fight Luis Ortiz in a WBC for the WBC #1 mandatory position if the WBC are happy to meet that requirement. Here's my take on it all. Personally, I think Luis Ortiz is a much tougher fight for Dillian Whyte. I think it will provide him the exposure he needs out in the US. If he could travel to the US, beat Luis Ortiz and do it in spectacular fashion, that, I've said this before, that increases his stock in the heavyweight division, and people will start seeing him as a serious contender. I've said this in the past. If you look at Dillian Whyte's record, the only real name he has on his record is Anthony Joshua. You know, don't talk to me about Lucas Brown. Lucas Brown was an overweight, out of shape, once a year fighter. You know, he's not a real contender. Although Dillian Whyte looks spectacular against him, let's be honest, you know, Lucas Brown wasn't the best of opponents. Yeah, Luis Ortiz, on the other hand, will be a lot different. He's hungry. He wants to be a world heavyweight champion. He's seen by a lot of people as the boogeyman. For so many years, he's been seen as the boogeyman in the heavyweight division, where no one's really wanted to face him. All right, this is a great opportunity for Dillian Whyte, in my opinion. Now, they might be playing their card a little bit here, thinking, well, we'll try to get the WBC and trying to convince the WBC that we'll take that fight, providing you make it the final eliminator and the winner becomes the number one mandatory challenger to Deontay Wilder's WBC title. But at the same time, if the WBC turn around and say, no, you know, we're not going to do that. If Dillian Whyte fights Luis Ortiz, he will become, and he beats Luis Ortiz, he will become the number 2 mandatory challenger. You know, I don't think they should still turn it down. I think it's a great opportunity for Dillian Whyte. I think it's a great way for him to raise his stock, raise his profile in the US and globally in terms of in the sport of boxing. You know, he says he can beat Luis Ortiz. He says Luis Ortiz is an old fat man. Not my words, these are, you know, Dillian Whyte's words. And this is what, you know, he says he'll beat him easy, he'll knock him out. So, you know, if you do that and you do it in spectacular fashion, you know what I mean, people can't deny you. Do you know what I mean? And if you start calling out Deontay Wilder or any other heavyweight, no one can say no to you, no one can deny you because you've just done a number on a top heavyweight. I don't personally think he should waste his time with Kurbak Pulev. In my personal opinion, I don't think he gets anything out of that fight, personally. Pulev, you know, known for pulling out of fights and stuff like that. So he pulled out of his fight with Anthony Joshua for crying out loud. You know, it was a title shot and you pulled out. So how serious of a contender is he? In my opinion, Dillian Whyte should go after Luis Ortiz, regardless of whether the WBC give in to their demands or not. That's just my personal opinion. I think it's a great opportunity for Dillian Whyte. I think it's a great fight. It's a better fight. It's a tougher fight. He'll get more credit for it if he wins and does it in spectacular fashion. You know what I mean? It's a great opportunity for him, in my opinion. And that's what Dillian Whyte needs right now. He needs a top opponent and he needs to put on a great performance against him as well. Of course, it's important to get the win, but he needs to do it in a way that impresses the world. And although a lot of people thought, you know, he looked impressive against Lucas Brown, I think a lot of people would still turn around and said, well, it's Lucas Brown after all. Do you know what I mean? Go and do that against a top contender. And here's an opportunity to do that against Luis Ortiz, who is a top contender. In my mind, you know, Pulev doesn't give him the notoriety that he needs. Luis Ortiz does give him that. And I think he personally needs to take the fight against Luis Ortiz, whether the WBC give in to the demands or not. All right, that's just my take on it. Let me know what you think. As always, guys, like, share and subscribe. Until next time, this is Cypherbox reminding you to keep it real.